So Sandeep ji has joined. Sir, good morning.
Very good morning to all.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, sir. Good
Good morning,
morning.
sir.
Good morning. Good
Good
morning.
So
morning,
my
sir.
colleagues are here. Kapil ji is here. Meenakshi ji is
Hi,
here.
Kapil. Hi.
Hello, sir.
And other colleagues will also join, sir.
Mhm.
And I think 193 people have already joined. So
Wow.
so this is a very interesting topic. So students are interested, in this particular uh, topic, and students are particularly interested, depending on the area of specialization they choose,
Uh-huh.
marketing, finance, HR, and operations, how blockchain is impacting, that segment. So they are very keen to understand that in this short session.
Yeah, we'll try to capture as much use cases as possible, especially in the area of finance, and we see there's a lot of traction is happening as far as the blockchain is concerned. And
True.
apart from the finance, we see the government sector like medical sector, pharma sector. There are so many, and supply chain. So
True.
food industry. So there are a lot of area where we see this blockchain thing will come to picture. Audit is the one of the biggest area where we see it will have
True.
a great traction. So all in all, it will impact, or it is impacting more or less all the field and area, and we'll see by the time how things will progress. And also say, I don't want to make it as like a monologue. I will be, love to get the questions, so that I will try to answer the specific question to the specific person.
So
Not very much, but at least, so that I should at least feel that okay, whatever I conveyed, it got comprehended in certain way.
absolutely. So what I suggest, sir, maybe in first 50, 60 minutes, you can build the concept of, blockchain and how it is impacting different sectors. And then we can spend maybe 30, 40 minutes in inviting questions, because there are large number of students. So I'm sure the questions will also be there. So we can take the questions at
Oh,
that time.
that will be really nice. So I think that's,
Because this is an online setting,
yeah.
so
Controlling
so
the questions are difficult. I understand that.
so yes, so
That's true.
so Bishnoi ji has also joined. Good morning, Bishnoi ji.
Good morning, sir.
Ji, so
Well,
can we start?
Morning.
Because 214 people have already joined, and others will also join very soon. So Kapil sir, can we join? Can we start?
Sir, we
Yes,
can.
sir.
okay,
Okay.
great.
So let me take the privilege of introducing Mr. Sandeep Kumar. He is an expert in blockchain. He's a blockchain trainer also. He is an expert in cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and he has been working in this area for last 19 years. And he has founded a company called as uh,
Connected minds.
Connected Minds, yeah. And they are also based in Greater Noida only. So while we were designing the core structure for ITS sector, I touch based with him with the respect to how AI is impacting various sectors. So that's how I know him, and he has been very nice, very helpful to me, and very supportive. And that is why I requested him, because blockchain is something which is very important, very critical, and is impacting every industry in some form or the other. that is why I requested him, so that everybody can have an understanding of what blockchain is. And depending on your interest level, you can let us know if you would be interested in some kind of detailed training in blockchain, maybe in the next term, right? So, sir, over to you now. You can take this thing. Thank you.
Sir, so kind of you. You have explained about me. That's thanks a lot for that. So let me start the session. Before I just start this presentation, I'll just try to take some real life examples, so that people can correlate it to very well. We all are kind of Bollywood fan. We watch movies right from 70s movies or 60s movie or late 80s and all that. If you see those 60s or 70s movie, if the movie is from the village side, what used to happen? There's a farmer, and farmer will will have some need of money. He will go to the some money lender of that particular village, and that money lender will give the money to that particular farmer, and that farmer will use that money for his daughter marriage or whatever he will use that money for, and that money lender will keep incurring the interest on that money, because the guy is illiterate, doesn't understand the mathematics. So that money lender will keep adding the interest, and then the farmer will die and his son will become Daku. That's kind of a standard story we know that happens to all those 60s, 70s movie of Sunil Dutt and all those stars. But you just change the story. You just change the story a bit, and then you see the whole thing changes. When that farmer goes to that particular money lender and asks for the money, and when his assistant was entering inside the ledger, during that process, if that same entry could have happened to the chief of the village ledger, some video of the village ledger also DM, or maybe to the DM of the city ledger also simultaneously. So whatever entry that money lender is doing to his ledger, if simultaneously that same entry is happening to multiple ledger at the same time, so that guy, that money lender will not dare to fudge the account. Actually, he will not do that fudging. He will never do that, because he understands that if he will try to fudge the account, it will impact other ledgers also, and he will caught. So so that kind of social impact it gives when you have a distribution of the system where we can create multiple entry at the multiple places. So you can understand that story couldn't have happened if we would have a multiple ledger entry system. So that's where you can understand the kind of impact it's creating to the system. Other details I will go one by one. So whenever I start the session, I always give this example to at least people understand it from a very basic what exactly it is. Okay, let me start the presentation. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We are able to see, sir.
Okay. So it's about me. I think sir already explained, so nothing much to say. That's it. Yeah. Okay. So let me start from here. We all use money for various reasons, right from the centuries whenever civilization have ever started. We always do the exchanges for our living beings. Earlier system was the barter systems, when against the rice we used to get the wheat, and against the wheat we used to get the pulses, and blah blah blah. And then after that we have improvised into a system where you used to exchange some expensive metal like gold or something for the goods. Now when the wheel has invented, then people used to travel across the town. Now then they started doing the tradings across the cities. Now it was very cumbersome to carry all those heavy gold items and do the tradings. It's, you know, and also there was a chance that you will get robbed in between the forest area. So what they would have done actually, they would have created a center of places where they will go and say, okay, I'm giving you this much of gold, and against that you give me some written consent. Okay, this consent means it's a 200 gold coins or 500 gold coins. So they would have done it that way. And lately, that center has created multiple centers, and across those, to manage those multiple centers, we will have a centralized system that would have created. And lately, that gold coin concept converted into the currency system, and whatever we are currently right now. And all those centers that I am talking about, it is nothing but a banks, right? So we have a central bank, we have the other subsidiary banks, and then there are state-related banks who's been controlled by the central banks. And central bank, like RBI in our case, and federal bank in case of US, they print the currency, they ensure the value of the item, they ensure they manage the inflations and all. So it's being controlled by the centralized system always. From the centuries, it's being managed by the centralized system. We really don't know why something that was costing like 1 rupees 20 years before, why it is costing us 200 rupees now. Somebody will do some calculation somewhere, and he will say something has happened on the paper, and this is the rate, and this is the kind of inflation we are in because of demand and supply and whatever. They will give all those things. We really don't know because everything is being centralized. Now what problem happens? Because of all these centralized systems we are having, like banks, we really don't know what kind of accounting they have, what kind of finances they have, what kind of transparency they are creating, whether they are giving loans to somebody who is already fudging the accounts. We know in India, multiple situations have happened. Many banks got died because of those heavy loans they have given to the corporates without much collateral they have taken from those people, and bank got died. So all what happens, we all common people submits or deposits our money to all these centralized banks, and these people generally give is to the corporates so that they can earn for them, and then we will be getting our interest or something like that. That's how the system works. But when the transparency goes, what happens? You can see in my slide also. I say the example of this 2008 Lehman Brothers collapse. Lehman Brothers used to be the biggest bank of America, and suddenly one fine day it simply collapsed. One fine day, without giving much details of anything, they simply collapsed. Full bank closed. Approx $600 billion assets they filed as a bankruptcy. So you can just understand, if the bank is collapsing, it just cannot be a one-day phenomena. It must be a phenomena of many years. So in the many years' time, they have fudged the accounts, and nobody was bothering. Maybe 4, 5, 10, 7, 8 people were aware of all those things they were doing, and nobody was aware. And one fine day, they collapsed. So many people would have lost their money, and they would have committed suicide. Nobody knows that part. So that's what happened when you have a centralized systems, actually, right? In India also, we know the Bank of Baroda fraud has happened. Punjab National Bank fraud has happened. We know so many one bank in Bombay maybe last year has collapsed because of all these reasons. Because what that centralized body, that bank is doing with our money, we really don't know what kind of transparency they should be giving us. They are not giving us anything. They are simply providing us our basic inputs, like this is your bank details, this is your account status, and how much you are running, whether bank is doing good or not, and when they are sharing their financials, whether they are correct or not, nobody knows. It's only those top 5, 10 players that they understand about this. So that's where we're coming from. It's like the centralized system is kind of creating a kind of monopoly on our assets. I am generating the money. I should know where my money is going. But some people somewhere are sitting somewhere who is dictating their term to ensure that they will say what will happen to your money. You are nobody to decide. So that's where the monopoly, or you can say autocracy of the single system is being created. And you can see in any system, yeah, it's the bank is there. We can see in any centralized system where they are creating monopoly, and if the body is becoming big, they will dictate their terms. For example, YouTube. When YouTube started, it was a very good thing. You can simply go and upload your content and your videos and so many things. Now lately, when content has so much of content has been created, and people started earning money about that, advertisements and all. No, YouTube is dictating their terms. They can off anybody's video at any point of time. They can charge whatever amount that they want to charge for one particular content. If it is free, that's fine. If you're starting creating business, you can see their real show. I know so many people, they are earning hefty money on the YouTube, and suddenly YouTube has blocked them. They are not even giving the reason, because they are the single people. They are having the monopoly. So that's the problem of the monopoly or the centralized system, because they can dictate their terms and you can do nothing. That's the problem is. Okay, I think I already explained about this earlier money systems, where we used to transact the gold and silvers, and how the centralized bank could have created. Okay. So what happened? We understand, this problem of central bank and all those centralized systems are there. What happened? In 2008, there was a pseudonymous group called Satoshi Nakamoto. This is not the person. This is the group. Nobody knows who is this guy, and who all the people in that group. Nobody knows. Maybe they were scared to propose some alternate system, because bank on all those corporate would have killed them. So they might have given some pseudonym they have given. The name was Satoshi Nakamoto, and they proposed a concept called Bitcoin. And they told that it's a electronic payment system based on a mathematical proof, and all those money exchange and everything can be done with this system. The system will be transparent. It will do people-to-people transactions. All the transactions will be visible to everybody, and the system will itself generate the currency. There will not be any standard reason to generate the currency. In our case, we really don't know when our RBI is printing the cash, and at any point of time, how much cash a particular system has created, we really don't know. And it's still, RBI also not sure how much currency is in circulation at any given point of time. They are not even sure at any given point of time. They really don't know. But in this particular situation, what they have told, it's a electronic system. So electronic system means it's not a offline or a cash system. It will be online only, and you can utilize this currency through the online mechanism only. You cannot use a cash to do some transactions. So it avoid all those black marketing stuff and all that. So this concept came in 2008, given by a pseudonymous group called Satoshi Nakamoto. So in our case, for the fiat currency, okay, there are two terms we use. For this normal currency, we use a word called fiat currency, FIAT, and for this Bitcoin type currencies, we use a word called cryptocurrency. Why the word crypto? We'll come back and we'll just see next slides. What is the meaning of crypto here? So in our fiat currency, primarily, if you will see, it's being controlled by the central bank. How much currency to get print, when to demonetize, when to demonetize a currency, it's being controlled by the RBI of India. They can say, okay, from today onward, this 10 rupees notice of no value. They can say that at any point of time. We can't say, we can't do nothing, because it's being controlled by them. But in this particular case, there is no governing authority in case of Bitcoin. It is a distributed system. So fiat is a centralized system, and crypto is a distributed system. So let me just give you again one live example. You can say There is two type of design we know. One is called autocracy and another is called democracy. If you see the concept of autocracy, what happens? There will be a king or there might be a dictator like Putin and somebody else. So you will see that guy will be deciding whatever is being done in his country. And whatever he will say will be the final statement. Nobody can change it. It's called autocracy. So that's where our centralized system works. Autocracy, they will say whatever they need to do. Whatever is good for them, they will decide because they are in power. They are having so many people. They have so much of money. So centralized systems like RBI, YouTube, all those systems, I keep them in a logical group called autocratic systems. And you see something called a democratic system. Like, in our case, in India, we have a democracy. How generally any law get passed? There will be a law that will be tabled on the Lok Sabha table. There will be the discussions. If people are not agreeing to that statement, there will be a voting happened on that. And if that voting is against of that particular bill, it will reject the bill. Otherwise, it will be accepted. So there is a voting happens. All the people are in the ecosystem. They decide what happens. Prime Minister cannot decide one find, okay, this is the rule. So that's where is the difference between centralized system and the distributed system. So this Bitcoin works on the distributed system. Whether coin to be generated or not, whether one particular transaction is to be submitted or not, it's not being decided by one particular authority. It is a distributed authority. How it works, I'll tell you. But I just stopped here just to tell you that this is the basic difference: centralized and the distributed. Okay. Okay. Here, I just wanted to touch base on in a very small in one particular concept called cryptography. Cryptography in a non-technical term, technically I can explain it, but let me tell you in a non-technical term. In cryptography, in a non-technical terms, basically a coded statements. Like, in some cases, if you want to send something to somebody and you want them not, and you want somebody should not read it in between. Suppose you want to send a letter to somebody and you don't want postman to understand what is being written inside that. Do you have any way to do that? Maybe what you will do, you will write some coded words inside the letter, and then you will send that letter to your person. The postman will go and he will deliver that letter to that particular person. Now, if that recipient understand that coded stuff, he will decode it and he will that person will understand, okay, what exactly you have written inside the code. So that's the meaning of cryptography. That's the meaning of cryptography in a very non-technical sense. So what happens whenever we do any transactions, it is been decoded in such a way that nobody can understand except you, because it's a public system. Everybody will be having access of everybody's transactions. So it is very well understood that it must be cryptographically encrypted so that nobody should understand the transaction detail of yours except you. So that's the meaning of a cryptography. Just wanted to touch base in a very non-technical term. Otherwise, it's having some other details also. I will go if there's a need. Okay. So what happens in the Bitcoin system? What happens? So I want to do a transaction. I will do that, and and I will check whether my wallet system is having money or not. Once there will be money in my system, my transaction will happen. So how it is easy to use? It is, you can secure it. In case of normal currency, you are creating a wallet system for you. Like, you will have your own wallet where you will be putting your normal currencies or cash. In this particular case, it will be having a 60-digit code that will be given to you, and that you have to only store either in form of a kind of some hardware chip. Maybe you can store it in some file. You can store it in some hard disks, wherever you want to store that. and that is your only wallet. You don't have to carry anything anywhere. So wherever you will go and you want to do some transactions, there will be some application. They will ask you to enter that particular key, and that as soon as you will enter your key, it will open your wallet and it will tell you all the transaction details. And from there, you can send money to somebody and receive money to somebody. So that's where the whole transaction happens. You don't need to create anything. Second thing is that whenever you do any transaction, you know, and everybody know in that ecosystem, okay, some transaction has happened. Some transaction has happened. And so at any point of time, I know how much currency is in the circulations. So everybody knows every details. So there's nothing called bank defaults. No, like bank has no money, but it is, you know, giving the loans to all they are in the loss. Here we know what is happening to the system, and everything is very, very transparent. One more thing is there, I need to tell you. In case of fiat currency, there is no limit how much currency you can print. In case of Bitcoin, there is only limit of 21 million that can be generated to the whole ecosystem. There's a limit inside the system, actually. I'll come back to this mining system, how Bitcoin is being generated. Okay. Fine. So now let me tell you the whole ecosystem, how generally this whole process happens actually. You know, you can see in the diagram itself. You know, someone requests a transaction. The transaction is being broadcasted to the computer system. Whenever you're doing the transaction, there are particular people called miners. Okay, those miners will verify your transactions. I will detail this miner stuff later. You can just say, okay, there is some computer is there. You can term this miner is some computer only. There is no person involved in this. It's a computer only. There's a miner who will verify your transactions. Once transaction is being verified and it's being approved by 51% of the node system of the miners, the transaction will be added to the ecosystem, and a new blockchain of the block will be created, and that's how your transaction will be completed. And everybody's transaction will be going into that direction only. So now you can say that's how it happens in normal course also, right? I will go and will do some transaction, and there will be some bank person will be there who will verify my transaction, and on that basis only it allows the transactions. But in that case, it's centrally approved and authorized. In this case, what happens? Let me tell you in bit detail. You know, if you're thinking the concept of blockchain, you can consider it as a network of computers, millions of computers that are being connected across the world. Okay. Out of those computers, there are some computers who will be there in that ecosystem. Their job is to verify those transactions. Okay. Now you can say, if that is the case, and if it's a public system, anybody and everybody can become the miner, right? What is wrong in that? But what happens? There are some cap and the activity that miner has to do. Otherwise, you know, nobody can become miner just like that. So what happens actually, and how the how the Bitcoin is being generated to the system? So let me start. What happens? You know, when you're doing any transaction, whenever some transaction happens, so that transaction should be getting verified, whether the sender is having money or not, whether the receiver's address is proper or not. You know, all those things you can do. In normal case of bank, you know, that cashier does that. But in this case, how will you do? So that miner is there who will say, okay, I will do that. Now, anybody can become miner, and if suppose there are a million computers are there and everybody wants to verify that particular transaction, so what will happen? It will create a jam in the system. The whole system will become very slow. So to avoid the, the transactions speed control and all, what it does, it gives the activity or some task is being given to that particular miner to solve it. Some puzzle will be given, and that puzzle has to be solved by those miners. If anybody of those miners will solve the puzzle first, will be allowed to verify the transactions. And as soon as the miner verifies the transactions, in return of that, the system generates a coin, called Bitcoin. This is the only way money is being generated to the system. Otherwise, there is no way money can be generated inside the ecosystem. We have no way to do that. Like, if you say in general way, in our normal currency system also, one has to mine inside the gold mine to get the gold, and against that gold only the cash is being generated inside the bank in earlier days. Similarly, in this particular case also, there will be miners who will solve that complicated puzzles, and I'm telling you, the puzzles is so complicated that the normal computers can't even solve that puzzle. It needs a really, really high-end computers to solve that puzzle, so that that coin can be generated inside the ecosystem, and that's how the transaction happens. Okay. So now I'm coming to this is the whole Bitcoin concept. I try to explain in that I try to explain what is the fiat currency, what is the Bitcoin, why Bitcoin is different from the fiat currency, and how Bitcoin is being generated, how fiat currency is being generated, what is the control Bitcoin is having, what is the control fiat currency is having. Bitcoin has no control, it's a distributed system. Anybody can become the miner, anybody can be part of that network at any given point of time. You can get the transaction, I can also, and anybody of you can anytime get the all transaction detail to your computer at any given point of time. Everybody in the world, it's very open stuff. Fiat currency, we know it's not possible. Now, why I explained Bitcoin to start with? Because it was the first thing that came inside the system of blockchain. Now, let me explain you about the concept called Bitcoin. Okay, just one second. Okay, now I have explained you the Bitcoin concept. Now let me tell you about the technology it uses. The technology that is used is called blockchain. Now I'm coming on the blockchain. As we already discussed, it's a distributed system. Distributed system means it's not being controlled by the one system. There will be multiple systems who will decide what exactly is wrong, what exactly is right. One system cannot decide that. This is the one thing, that's why I wanted to tell you. If you see the statement that has been written, the blockchain is an incorruptible digital ledger of economic transaction that can be programmed to record not just financial transaction, but virtually everything of the value. So now what's happening? I'm just moving you from a bit technical aspect to the functional aspect. Just bear with me for 5-10 minutes. Just be focused. So what is happening now? I told you it's a distributed system. There will be the verification will be happening by the multiple system before any transaction will be committed. It is distributed. It is transparent, right? Now you can see that when I'm talking about the transactions, right? It can be your monetarily transaction, right? I'm transferring 1 Bitcoin to somebody. That transaction. I am distributing some document. That is also a transaction, right? I am sharing my share rights to somebody. That's also a transaction. I am giving my identity detail to somebody. That's also a transaction. So you can see how the transparency of the transactions made all other domain part to come inside the blockchain system. So what blockchain does? It's a digital ledger system that can program or record any transactions. I already explained that, how this thing came to picture. Okay. Now you see how I think when I started my point, I already explained you the concept of distributed ledger. The distributed ledger means the ledgers are distributed. Means whenever I'm doing the transactions, that transaction is not being entered inside the one ledger. You can see in early days we used to have that kind of a ledger, that left hand side that you can see. We used to have this double entry bookkeeping systems, right? And then lately we have the Excel sheet where we create all those entries. Here what we are telling is that, whenever any transaction happens, the transaction will not only be stored in one system, it will be stored inside the multiple system, whosoever will be part of that particular transaction at any given point of time. So suppose if I am the part of if my computer or your computer is part of that Bitcoin blockchain, so whenever somebody will do any transaction across the world, that transaction will be added to your system also, and you can verify that also. So any transaction that has been happening is being added to a system. That's the concept of distributed ledger. Okay. So there is no centralized authority who ensures that whether to enter the system's entry or not. So it avoids that corruption in such a way. So you cannot decide whether this entry will be inside the system or not. The system will decide, and once it will be deciding accordingly, that particular entry will be inside the system. Okay. There is one more concept comes to the blockchain thing, is called immutability. So immutability means something that is not that will not change over a time. Okay. So what happens whenever you will be doing a particular transaction, and suppose the transaction is being committed, and suppose the transaction is being approved by the miners, and it is being added to the blockchain. Fine. Now suppose you say, okay, fine, something wrong had happened and I want to correct it. So in general ledger system, what will you do? You will go, and maybe in case of a copy based ledger, you will go and you will cut it and you will add the new entry. And in case of computer based ledger, you will go, you will delete that row and you will add the new row. Right? In case of blockchain, you cannot do that. It's immutable. Once a transaction happened, it's happened. You cannot change that. What you can do, if it's a wrong transaction, you can again redo the transaction, and it will be the new entry, or it will be a new block inside the blockchain. So you can at any point of time come to know, okay, one wrong transaction has happened and then one right transaction has been created. So that's how the kind of transparency it gives to you. You cannot remove it. So what we understood till now, one is it's a distributed system. First thing, it's a distributed ledger. Second thing is it is the immutable. All the transaction it's doing, it's immutable. Please understand this word very clearly. Distributed system. Second thing is the immutability. I cannot remove any transaction if whatever I have done inside it. Okay, I'll come to this. One second. I just wanted to explain you two more things before I will come back to. Okay. So I already explained you about the immutability. Now there is something called provenance. There's something called provenance inside the blockchain. What happens in the provenance? As we know, whenever we are putting any entry inside the ledger. So if I have to prove it, okay, this is the final details I have created. There is no change has ever happened. So it gives us the control on that particular system. What happens whenever I'm doing that, whenever I'm doing any transactions, whenever I'm doing any transaction, and if the transaction is not immutable, so what happens? I have to already create a new set of transactions inside the systems. So what happens? I know what are the life cycle on which this particular transaction has been true. First it went wrong, then again a new transaction happened, and it created correct. So that's where this blockchain gives us one more benefit called provenance. So you can just read it also. Data provenance is the field of recording the history of the data from its inception to the various stages of the data life cycle. So this data provenance helps provide a detailed picture of how data was collected. So that's what I'm telling. When you're collecting the data, maybe the data went wrong, there was some addition you have done in that system. So you can create the audit trail of the full system. It will not happen that you have created the data for first time, that it went wrong, you simply edited it yourself, then again you did the edit number 2, edit number 3, edit number 4, edit number 5. But when I am seeing the data, actually I am seeing the data, final data. So it doesn't give me the audit trail of the system. From where you actually collected the data, and what are the various stages it has been through before it's come to the final stage. So because you cannot edit the things, it is immutable, you have to create the multiple cycle of those transactions. So that's where it gives you the collection of the details. Okay, this is the life cycle this data has been through. So this is the concept called provenance. Okay, I wanted to tell this also. This is called consensus. Just be very focused in this concept. What is the consensus here? The consensus means, as we discussed when we started our session, like in case of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha in the parliament, what happens? Wherever any bill comes, there will be that discussion happens, and on that discussion, what happens? Those people has to either get agree to it. If they are not agreeing to it, there will be the voting happens. Same in case of blockchain. Whenever any transaction comes, all the nodes in the system will say, okay, fine, let's verify the transactions, and there will be some verification happens, and on the basis of the verifications, if it adhere to those verification concepts, then only it allows the transaction to be inside the systems. So those variety of rules with which that consensus happens is called, there are variety of names. It's called, proof of work, proof of stake, proof of activity, proof of burn, and there are variety of things. It is way too technical to discuss about these things, but I'll tell you one very non-technical consensus. It's called proof of work. In the proof of work, what happens, as I told you in case of Bitcoin, what happens in Bitcoin uses proof of work consensus, just for your information. What happens whenever any transaction comes? So all the miners jumps and they will say, okay, I will verify these transactions. So what system does? It say, okay, fine. Everybody of you wants to verify the transaction. Very good. Now do one thing. This is the puzzle. You solve it for me, and whosoever will do thing for first, I will be allowing that particular miner to verify the transactions. So that puzzle is very complicated puzzle, and it requires very high speed machine, and it consumes lots of electricities and all. And at the end, whosoever comes first is being allowed to solve the puzzle. So that work, that proof of that particular work, okay, I solved the puzzle. That guy, that only allows to do the transaction. So that Bitcoin uses the proof of work. So there are other consensus are there where this blockchain uses to approve that particular transaction. Now, third point is the security. Because system is decentralized, okay, and it uses the cryptography, okay. So because cryptography is a very advanced technology, so it uses cryptography. It's a distributed system, so it is very secure system. So what are three things we learned till now? Provenance, consensus, and the security. And there's something called finality is there also. Finality basically means it's something equal than immutability, that you can say. Like finality means something is final and it is irreversible. Like whatever transaction you have done, it is done. You cannot change it. Just not possible. So that's why in case of Bitcoin, if you're doing any transaction, if you're sending money to somebody, if you send it, then you send it actually. You cannot reverse that transaction. Maybe if that guy will send you money again, then only you will be able to get the money. So that's where it is final. You cannot revert it back. Once it is happened, it is happened. If miner has approved the transaction, then you're done. It is being approved and the transaction will happen. You cannot control that part. So that's how the blockchain thing is there, and that's why it disallow any fraud system in that. Immutability, I already explained you that, you know, whenever you will do any transaction, you cannot change it. You cannot edit anything inside that. One thing, sorry. I'm just coming to the point where I started, so that. Okay, fine. So till now, let me just repeat the points. I try to explain you. The blockchain system is distributed. It is immutable. It is having the provenance systems. You can create the audit trails of all your transactions. It is secure. It works on the basis of consensus. There are a variety of consensus are there. Bitcoin uses a consensus called proof of work, where the miner has to solve a puzzle to approve or verify a particular transactions. These all things I try to explain you. Okay. Now, in case of blockchain, there is two concepts that comes to the system again. It's called public blockchain and the private blockchain. Okay. In case of public blockchain, it means that anybody or everybody can be part of the system. For example, in case of Bitcoin, if you want to become the node, you can simply create your own computer. You download all their chain system, and you are part of their node system. You are the node. There's no problem. As I told you, blockchain means a chain of transactions. It's nothing but a chain of variety of transactions, and that those transactions are being copied on the multiple ledgers. When I'm talking about the multiple ledgers, ledgers means computers, or in technical term, we use the word called node. So node means computer here, and transaction means a block. So whenever a transaction is being created, so inside that blockchain, a new block generated, and that whole block will be replicated on the multiple computers. So in case of public blockchain, what happens? Anybody and everybody can be part of the system, and it can become a node. So whenever any block will be generated out of a transaction, that full blockchain will be copied to your computer also. It's called a public blockchain. Now you see a situation where some cases you really don't want everybody or anybody will be part of your system. Like in case of property documents, or maybe in case of some land record stuff. You don't want everybody or anybody or everybody to become the part of that particular node systems. In that case, we create a system called permission blockchain. Permission blockchain means, okay, if you want to become the node of the system, fine. You request for that, and the system will approve you on the basis of your credentials. Then you can become the node. So that's the difference between a public blockchain and the consortium or private blockchain. Hope I clear. Maybe I'll take questions on that part also. But the system is very simple. Public means public. Anybody and everybody can join. And in consortium, it will be permission. Only those permission system can be part of the particular system. For example, suppose a bank wants to create a blockchain system. Suppose what it will do, there's a bank 1, there's a bank 2, there's a bank 3, there's a bank 4 are there. And because they do their some cross transactions also, they do always. So they will say, fine, let's create a blockchain system. So in that case, bank 1, bank 2, bank 3, bank 4 will be the 4 nodes in the ecosystem, and they will be, creating those transactions, and all the transaction detail will be copied on the all 4 nodes of those banks. So that's but if I want to become a part of their node, they will say, no, you are not a bank, you are not allowed. So that's where permission comes, because it requires a permission. But in case of Bitcoin, I can do it today itself, and any one of us can do that. Technology underneath, fine. We'll discuss it later. Hashing is okay. This is the a standard way how a particular block of a blockchain looks like. You can see, just see from the down, there's something called transaction ID list. Whatever transaction you have created, all the transaction will be here, okay, in that particular block of the blockchain. And there is something called Merkle. Merkle means basically whatever transactions we have created here, it will use those transactions and it will generate a coded hash of it actually, and that hash will be stored here. That hash is called Merkle. Timestamp means when the transaction is being approved, and also it gives you the previous block's hash details also. So this is the typical blockchain. It's being technical, it's fine. If somebody wants to ask more question, I am open, we can discuss it later, but that's what I wanted to show you here. Okay. We discuss about this public blockchain, consortium blockchain, and all that. Let me tell you about the public blockchain a bit more detail. There are variety of examples of the public blockchains. One is Bitcoin, another is Ethereum. Ethereum is a very popular public blockchain, and it allows you to, apart from the payment transactions and all, it allows you to create the softwares on that Ethereum blockchain also. So basically, this is the first blockchain, Ethereum, that came in the world, where it allows you to develop the software also on the blockchain, and in that software, you can create variety of logics that will be transparent for variety of parties. We'll discuss that also later. Fine. And in case of consortium blockchains, the examples are following, Quorum, Corda, and Hyperledgers. Hyperledger is being, approved by IBM and the Linux Foundation. And as just see this particular example. This is generally happens. Like there's a participant A is there, and he wants to, do some transactions. So the bank record will be in the silos, auditor record will be somewhere else, regulator will be somewhere else, and participant B record will be somewhere else. So basically, the guy has to communicate to all the parties and to get the details. And whenever any transaction happens, all of these parties has to communicate accordingly on that basis of the transactions, and that's how one particular transaction completes. Whenever you want to go and buy a property, they will say, okay, go to the authority, then they will say, go to the register office, then they will say, go to the bank, and then for the bank, they will say, okay, fine, check whether the guy is a proper credit limits or not. So all those details are separate, and you have to go to the various party once for all, again and again, to ensure all the things happens. Instead of that, if you have a system that is part of a blockchain, and all of their transactions are being shared across at any given point of time, so things will become very smooth actually. So if you want to check the insurance detail of the person, any of the details of the person, it will be part of that full blockchain block, and these all will be the node of that particular system. Like that insurance company, that regulators, that auditors on those banks, they all will be part of that ecosystem where you can do variety of transactions, and the transaction is being shared across. So if some transaction has happened in the banks, respective of this particular property details. So auditor also knows, regulator also knows, so they don't need to go to the bank again to get the details, and they also don't know whether that transaction is being done properly or not. So these are the various permissioned or the consortium blockchain that has been created. This is the Quorum blockchain that has been created by the JP Morgan. And this is the Coda blockchain. This is created by the R3 and it's very popular blockchain now. And third is the Hyperledger, is very, very popular. Like 50% of people now are using Hyperledger. And that's how it works. You know, it's a permissioned one. All the enterprise level of financial level of applications, whatever use cases we will be discussing, most of them is being developed on the Hyperledger blockchain. Before I go to some use cases, I just wanted to have some questions so that I can understand, okay, whatever I explained till now is being bit comprehended, just for 5-10 minutes.
Sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Can I ask a question?
Please, please.
Sir, is Ledger only with the miners or it is also with all the users?
Ledgers will be with the nodes. Nodes means a computer. Nodes we use in a technical terms. You can consider it as a computer. For example, I'll say in a very, very generic word. Suppose you are having one laptop, I'm having one laptop, Dr. Sir is having one laptop, and one more sir is there having laptop. There are 4 computers in the system. Now, if I'm running a blockchain system, what will happen? If I'm doing any transaction, if I'm verifying any documents, I'm approving any record, I am doing some payment transactions, right? So as soon as I will create that transaction, so my blockchain system will verify it first, okay? And for the verification purpose, there will be variety of consensus will be created. Once that consensus will approve the transaction, that transaction will be stored inside the ledger of all those 4 systems. So if you're talking about the miners, of course, he is the node only, right? They're nobody. It's a node only. They are the only computers. So it will be stored inside their node as well.
So those 4 people are also miners or not?
As I told you, in case of public blockchain, anybody or everybody can be the miners. It just depends whether you want to have, whether you are having that level of computing power or not, in case of Bitcoin or Ethereum. So like, it requires, our normal laptop can't be a miner actually. Because as I told you, the kind of puzzle it solves, it's a really, really complicated puzzles. Like if I will start doing that puzzle from my laptop, it will take at least a year for me to solve that puzzle actually. You just understand. So they are having very high-end computing. So you have to spend lots of money to become a miner. Becoming a miner is not a joke actually. So you have to spend lots of money. So everybody is not going to spend that lots of money. The guy will say, okay, I just want to become a normal user of that Bitcoin. I simply wants to trade it. I simply wants to transact it. Let somebody else earn the money. So those miners earns money against those verifications. You can also be a miner if you want to become, but again, you need to have those high-speed, high-end computers.
And sir, talking about trading, so when we generate a Bitcoin ID, so there are personal details involved in it, like name and age and everything is involved in it, if it is a public Bitcoin system.
Look, those public details is being stored with the exchange. That is not part of your blockchain system. What blockchain system gives, it gives you one wallet ID details. One 16-bit number will be given to you. That number will either you can store in your hard drive somewhere, you can store on your some secure chip system, you can store that, and you can store in some notepad somewhere. It's up to you. So that detail is not part of the blockchain. It's anonymous. Nobody knows. If Sandeep is doing some transaction with you, So you will not come to know that whether the transaction has been done by me or to you only. That's only address to address transaction happens. Address A, address B, address A is sent to 0.25 Bitcoin to address B. So it is totally anonymous. You cannot understand address A Sandeep or address A someone else. It's only me that I know. Nobody else.
Yes, sir. And all this is open source, right?
Open source, total open source. You can even see the full Bitcoin code also at any given point of time.
Good morning. Arjus here.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, actually, I have one doubt.
Please.
Sir, in case of like we use internet, so we use Gmail. So all the data is stored in a server, and that servers are protected by the government and the Google company. But sir, in the case of Bitcoin, suppose I'm a Bitcoin miner, I validate transactions, and I store data at my Bitcoin crates, what they call. But if someone wants to delete some information, could he come to me and destroy my all physical data, like all my physical crates where I store the data? So will it delete all the data of the blockchain?
I think yes, the guy can come and delete, but that doesn't matter. You know, the answer is this. Now let me tell you why I'm giving this answer. Because I'm giving you this answer because I told when I started my session is that it's a distributed system. When I'm telling it's a distributed system, and when some person first has asked me the question, I told you very clearly the ledger details are being copied to the multiple computers. So the guy comes and he destroyed the system. Let him destroy. You can create a new laptop tomorrow, and you can sync all your data back to your computer. That doesn't matter.
Okay,
But in case of Google, it's a centralized system. Tomorrow, if the Google will start charging you $15 per mail, you have to give them because you have a dependency on the Google. It's a centralized system, right? And you really don't know whether Google is reading your mail also or not. They might be reading also. So basically, a centralized system is having that kind of a problem because they can do whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. It's an autocratic system. Yeah, please.
Thank you.
So how is price determined? Because if we see cryptocurrency, Bitcoin has a different price, Ripple coin has a different price, and Bitcoin Cash has a different price, right? So and it is highly fluctuable. Right now, the price of Bitcoin is around 7,65,000, and 6 months prior it was around 3,43,000. So it is a highly how is the price determined?
Well, it's a very subtle thing that who is a part of that whole ecosystem will know the things in very much detail. But generally, what happens? It is the way of the demand and supply. You know what happened? When this Bitcoin thing came to the ecosystem earlier, it was very cheap, right? 30 cents, one Bitcoin, 30 cents, and there was a very famous story. Whether you guys will know or not, it's called Bitcoin Pizza. Bitcoin Pizza Day, we say. What happened? Somebody was having Bitcoin, and he was hungry. It's a true story. And he went to a pizza store, and he asked for a pizza. And the guy said, "Okay, this is the cost." He said, "Oh, no, I don't have money. I have a Bitcoin only." And he gave him around 25 Bitcoin for two, full-size pizza. Right? And later, that one Bitcoin cost become approx $12,000, approximately $12,000, maybe $14,000 actually. So that guy lost approx $1 million, and that's how the rate jumped. What happens? How did it happen? When you're getting the confidence, okay, this system is stable, this system is transparent, and so many vendors and the business people are accepting the currency. So more people comes and they buy the currency. So when more people comes and buy the currency, as I told you, in case of Bitcoin, it is having a limit. 21 million is the only limit. You cannot create more currency than that. And if you see from the phenomena, it started in 2008 and it got its peak like by 2012 or something. So many people have already purchased the currency. Also, all the trading used to happen. It's like a demand and supply. You cannot create more currency now. There's no limit in that. So that's why Bitcoin becomes a prime currency. First of all, it was first to the whole ecosystem, and it creates the value to the ecosystem such that because all the prime people across the world, you name a person from Amitabh Bachchan to Amazon's head to somebody else, they all are possessing huge number of Bitcoins. So because of these big players are there in the ecosystem, they try to trade it, and whenever and when this COVID thing came into picture, all the fiat thing, the confidence went down, and people started again investing their money on the crypto. So suddenly the price again rises. So that's why I told you it's a transparent system. It just depends upon the demand and supply. Demand is high, price will increase. Demand is low, price will down.
But sir, supply is like constant. It is like 21 million. We have 21 million Bitcoins are there, and we have to like supply is like constant. But it depends on demand, right? But what I'm saying is like many countries have legalized cryptocurrency, so demand has risen up. So why not like price is also going in that pace? In 2017, the price of Bitcoin was 12 lakh rupees, but now it is like 7 lakh rupees. Instead of demand being rising and
but if you see, what happens, there is something called hype cycle of any technology. When Bitcoin has came to the picture and people started believing to it, it simply zoomed and this price goes like that. Then suddenly what happened, I will come to that point maybe after one or two more questions, called ICO has happened, initial coin offerings. And in that, so many frauds that has been created. So what happened suddenly because of those things, the confidence of people went down. When confidence of people went down, the supply went down drastically. Supply means not the creations. Creation is fixed. Supply means trading. Trading is not happening of the currency. Trading is not any currency. Why dollar is having a value? Why our Indian rupees is not having the value? Because of the trading rights, right? Dollar is having a more trading power. So if your currency doesn't have the trading power, its value will not be there. Value is not depending upon how much currency you can create. Our RBI can create, billions and trillions of cash today itself. But are they creating it? Because if they will create more, it will devalue the currency. But in this particular case, what happens? If there is no trading happens, people are not using it for any purpose. They are not buying stuff for that. They are not putting that coin to the exchange. If not, they're doing it. The price will die down actually. But if you're starting doing it again, if your confidence is coming up, because in the hype cycle, when the hype cycle went down, the technology has become more stable, people are getting confidence back. Now the price is coming back again. If you see I'm not following the Bitcoin, I don't have Bitcoin, but if you see the prices in last 3-4 months, it's again coming back. It's coming up again and again because people are getting back to the confidence. But if you see that there's 20 lakh price, it was a hype price because it was a very initial thing and everybody was investing money to it. So maybe it will stabilize its price to some standard to maybe more than I don't know the price, maybe $8,000 or $9,000, $10,000. Somewhere it will stabilize the price in coming time. But still it is in a early stage of the whole stuff, despite Bitcoin is a very popular currency and it's being used all across, except India, also in some other part of Asia. It will stabilize a little bit. Maybe it will not touch to its peak, but yes, it will become a sort of a stable currency where it can utilized as a standard tendering system in coming time. Yes, it is not right now. It is fluctuating a bit because of the demand. It all depends upon the confidence, right? Suppose if tomorrow if I want to say, okay, I want to pay salary of my staff in form of Bitcoin, I can do that? No, because the confidence is not there. So soon the confidence will come up, the price will become stable. That's how it goes.
Sir, is it a good investment purpose if we invest in good Bitcoins now or cryptocurrency?
Look, ask me questions specific to the Bitcoin. I'm not the trading expert. I'm not the financial expert.
But sir, you said that in upcoming times it would be a stable currency, right? So if
it's my I say as my personal opinion, but I can't give you and advise on that. You know.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
So I had a query, sir. If a transaction is going on through Bitcoin, and if something happens to my system, what will happen to that transaction, sir?
As I told you, this system is not a centralized system. Okay, so it's not that something will happen. Something will happen means what? Your network
So
will
if
go.
my system crashes or if there is a problem with my system,
As I told you, it's a distributed system. It doesn't matter if your system crashes. Actually, look, if I am doing this session right now. Okay, it's been done from my laptop. If my Wi-Fi in my house it went off, like my internet will go, right? That's true, right? But if I am having a system with being connected by the millions of computers, right? In that particular case, it doesn't matter whether my system get downs or not. It will anyway work. It work on the concept called peer-to-peer communication. So if you're doing some transaction and your system crash, let it get crashed. Once it is initiated the transaction from your system and your system get crashed, it doesn't matter if the transaction will happen. And you can check it from your mobile phone, you can check it from somebody else's machine as well. That's not a problem.
so what if we lose our wallet number? Then what?
Then it's gone.
So
Because
we cannot do anything about that.
No, because as I told you, it's a distributed system. Nobody owns anybody's wallet details. If you lose that 16-bit number, then you will lose your money also.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir, I have a question, sir. Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, I have a question regarding if blockchain is the future, then why are Indian banks and Indian banking industry not implementing it as of now? Thinking about it for the future also.
First of all, it is the wrong knowledge that Indian banks are not implemented.
Sir, as a tiny most of the banks are not.
ICICI Bank, Syndicate Bank, Kotak Mahindra Bank. I know 3-4 banks that have started only using it. Of course, if you see why government bank is kind of reluctant in using that and why they are not doing it, it's a very obvious reason. The obvious reason is transparency, right? Because banks, you guys are all from financial sector. You understand banks are not for the normal people. Banks are for the corporates. So you will come through the nexus between the corporates and the banks if the things are transparent. So they will be reluctant to do that. But I know they cannot hide for long. They have to do that. Otherwise, they will become irrelevant in coming time. That's how I see. They have to come out into this wagon actually. Because it's a transparency. So nobody likes transparency, right? Nobody likes. So transparency, to ensure that transparency, it will take some time to come. And I'm telling you, it will happen. So at least the private bank has started, especially in the case of clearance and the settlement. In case of trade finance, I'll tell that use case. Trade finance, they are doing it. They're doing it for sure. And other things as well. So banks are doing it.
Sir, good morning, sir. Aryan Bothra here. I had a question. What is the difference between mining and trading, and what is more beneficial?
Actually, mining is a different thing. Trading is a different thing. They're two separate things altogether. Trading is like a standard trading where you have something, you put that on the selling purpose, and the price goes up. You're selling it, and you are earning some profit out of it, right? That's the meaning of trading. Mining means here is that what's the meaning of the word mining? In the case of normal miners, they go inside a mine, they dig either coal or diamond or gold, right? They put their effort there. They don't know whether they will get the gold or not, but they put the effort. They invest their money. They invest their money to dig the gold. Maybe they will not get the gold. They will get only the stones, right? In the case of miners, in case of Bitcoin, what they do, they spend lots of money to purchase a high power computing systems. And then whenever any transaction comes, they start participating inside the system to solve that puzzle, as I mentioned already. As there are many miners. So maybe some of them will be able to solve the puzzle first, right? So maybe you will not be able to win in that point of time. Maybe you have to create more high competitive system. You have to spend lots of power, lots of money in that. So you're spending lots of money to get the Bitcoin. So it's a difference. Miners are the reason why Bitcoins are being generated in the ecosystem. Traders are somebody, when you are already having a Bitcoin, you are doing the trading of it. You know the price is fluctuating up and down is happening. When you're thinking, okay, Bitcoin might go up, you are putting it on the sale and you are earning the profit. So it's a different concept altogether.
So there was a news that a CEO of a Canadian company, Quadriga, died in India. It was 30 years old and lost there was a loss of $145 million of cryptocurrency. So if I am knowing that what my wallet and the password of whatsoever my currency is, so why I am facing a loss because of that, ma'am? So I didn't got that point. So if you could explain it.
No. Like if you know, you would have shared to your wife, you would have shared it to your, somebody in your family. But suppose you know something, it's a very common thing, right? Suppose you know something today and you didn't share it to anybody, and the system is such that without that number, it cannot open. System is, the public blockchain system is such that if you don't have that 16-digit number, you cannot go to your wallet and do the transaction. So if you lost it, you lost it. Either you should be sharing it to somebody, but while sharing it, you can say, okay, this guy can do the transaction on your behalf. So generally, you don't share it. So that's where he lost it. He didn't even share it to his wife also.
No, sir, but he was like the owner of the company, right? And people were investing in his company through Bitcoins.
Ah.
So if people were investing, people must be knowing their transaction IDs and wallet IDs and passwords.
What happens, these people who is trading on the behalf of that particular person, they are giving the private keys to that. Either what they do, either they will be giving their private keys to that particular person, the company owner, or they will say, fine, you do the transaction on your behalf and we will be giving you the money. So you got the difference?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay.
So,
Authentication. I mean, you mean to say that there was a authentication which was required by the owner, and he died.
No. Suppose I am the owner. Okay. If I am such a reliable person, you will say to me, sir, I am giving you $2,000. You do the trading on my behalf. So I am doing the trading on your behalf by my private key. You are giving me money, fine, but I'm not using your private key. I'm using my private key only, right? And you believe me because we have some contract done and whatever is there, fine. But suppose something has happened to me and the private key is not there. So whether the price go up or down, that person who has invested money with me can get nothing because the private key is gone. I cannot give him anything in that case. That's the problem actually.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any more questions so that else I will jump to the next topic?
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. Anand here.
This is the last question. I'll take so that
Yeah.
I will jump to the topic, please.
Yeah, sir. I want to ask you that, as you said that it is not centrally, blockchain is not centrally. So where are all the data stored, sir, of the blockchain?
Yeah, this confusion comes whenever I first explain that. When I'm telling it is distributed, it is not centrally. It is distributed. It is everywhere. If there is a 4 computers, it will be on the all 4 computers.
Like, sir, you mean to say that we are the only users, we can control all the data like this? Or
No. What do you mean by control the data?
like
We
means,
you can't control anything. There's no controlling power in blockchain.
so there might be some place like data might be stored of all the users. I want to ask that.
What's your name?
Anand, sir.
Anand, the problem is, when you're coming from the centralized system to the distributed system, this confusion will be there. Yeah, this is called hangover. It will be there for some time. You cannot, it will take some time for you to understand that. Centralized system where there's a Amazon cloud system or Google cloud is there, where all of my data is being stored, right? We know that. Or maybe we are having some space that Google gives us, right? That's the whole concept we have. But if I am telling you, at any point of time, the data will be distributed. Distributed means whenever I'm doing any transactions, my data will be stored at the 4 places.
Yeah.
So it's at the 4 places. That's it.
Okay.
So
As
you
I
mean
told you, when I gave you the example of that village farmer, what I've told in that, if whenever any transaction that money lender was doing, if the same transaction is being taken care by at 4 different places. What does that mean? The data is being stored at the 4 different places, and data that is being updated also on the regular basis. So data is latest. Data is being shared at the multiple places at the same time. So what happens? Data is not in your control. You are not owning the data, because data is with everybody. And also what I told, I'm repeating the words, it's immutable. Immutable means, can you please tell me?
So immutable means, I think,
Transaction done one time is not replaceable. Like we can't
Yeah,
replace
yeah.
it.
Exactly.
We
That's the
cannot
point.
change it like that.
So, as I told you, that's why you are not in control. Transaction once done, it's not immutable. It is immutable. So you cannot even change anything inside that. Transaction happened. If blockchain system has approved it, it will be added to a ledger. You can see the transaction. The transaction will be copied to your ledger also, and it will be copied to my ledger also. It will copy to the Dr. Sir ledger also. You can see it, you can do everything, but you cannot play around with it. You cannot edit it and all. So control wala word is bit risky. I said that's why I stopped you. Don't use word control. You're not controlling.
means generating a user will be also a transaction?
It depends. It depends what kind of application you're writing. In general, you will not be putting all your transaction inside the blockchain. Maybe you will say, fine, generating the user, I will not be putting inside the blockchain. It will be in my normal database. It just depends, right? Suppose I'm writing a software. I will say, okay, this transaction is very, very important. I will be putting that in the blockchain. Maybe just generating the user and forget password and all those things, maybe I will not put inside blockchain. But if you feel that you want to put in the blockchain, you can put that also. Okay, fine. And let me jump to the next topic quickly. Okay, shall I?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. So now the point is the smart contract. We all know you guys will be in the financial sector. Contract, we all know the meaning of contract. Contract means there is the consent of the 2 or more than 2 parties on certain written statements on which they all have to abide the details. That's called contract. You all know, right? Like, when we are buying the property, when we are doing any legal terms, wherever we go, we have those contracts we have to sign. We all know that. Now, I'm using a word called smart contracts. When I'm using the word smart contract, what does that mean? Smart contract means that the contract will be smart in such a way that it will execute its conditions automatically. And all those execution of those conditions will be stored inside the blockchain. So we know something has happened, on that basis something has happened, on that basis something has happened, and all those things have been stored inside the blockchain. Suppose I want to buy a property, and the property details, everything is part of a blockchain, and they wrote one smart contract. What will happen? Whenever I will go and buy the property, they will first check my CIBIL score is proper or not, whether I'm having other liabilities or not, and all those things they will check. Then they will ensure whether any bank has approved my loan systems or not, and it will also check the seller's credential, whether the paper of its properties are approved or not, whether he has any other liabilities to the authorities, to the society, or to other parties or not. All those things will check automatically, and then only it will allow that transaction to happen. If any of those things is not done, it will simply discard the transactions actually. So that's where the smart contract thing comes to the picture, and we write those smart contracts in blockchain for variety of other stuff. In Bitcoin system, we know all those money things are there. You are generating the Bitcoin, you're doing all the transactions. But lately with the blockchain, people started writing the applications also. They started writing the applications also, such that they can write variety of smart contracts and people can abide to that particular systems. It creates the system excellent, and people are kind of have a confidence. Okay, we can very well use it. Now with this smart contract stuff, the concept came called ICO and the STO, initial coin offerings, and there's a STO. Now what happens in a normal situation, when suppose I want to raise a fund, I want to raise some money for a particular business, and I say okay fine, I want to create a mall in some road somewhere, and I anticipate some 10 crore rupees to be in part of investment, and once I will get that money, I will build that house, or sorry, I will build that mall, and then it will attract more shopkeepers to be part of my mall, and it will generate the rent, and the business will grow, blah blah blah. All those things I have created a document and I have shared that, right? Now generally we know for all those investments and all, people either generally go to the bank, or maybe they take some other high level investors. So if they want to have a crowdfunding, where they will say, okay, fine, I want to generate this fund and I want to have a crowdfunding. How they will convince the people, okay fine, I'm creating a mall, you please come and invest. So that's where this ICO concept came to the picture, and they have a concept called tokens. What they do, they will create this mall concept, and they will say, fine, I'm tokenizing it in a form of a money. They will say, okay fine, suppose I need 1 lakh rupees, and in 1 lakh rupees I want suppose 100 or 1,000 investor to join in that in form of crowdfunding, and everybody will get 1,000 or maybe suppose 10,000 investor to join. So what they will do, they will create a 10,000 tokens against that 1 lakh rupees investment, because they need 1 lakh. So this 1,000 tokens they will be shelling out in public, and they will say, fine, if this one token is pricing 100 rupees only, you buy one token today, I am about to reach whenever I will reach 1 lakh, I will be closing this process, and that with 1 lakh I will do my business, and once I will get my returns, I will pay you the some returns on your investments. So that's where this ICO concept came to the picture. You have to create a white paper. People are convinced on that idea, and then you can publish that token concept on the smart contract, and people will come and they will buy the tokens in their wallet. They will have their in the wallets, and once that investor is reaching to its limit where they want, okay, I want to raise this much of money, that ICO will be closed, and that guy will be using that money for the investment. And also in that application, it will ensure that it will keep updating the people about the progress, so that they'll come to know, okay, this is the progress is happening, and once that project is done, they will keep getting their investments. So that's where this thing also comes to the picture, where you can use this concept in form of a crowdfunding. Lately in America, people told that, and government told that basically, whenever you're doing such type of thing where we are raising the money, and against that raising the money, you are getting the profit also. So that's not a normal state thing. It comes under the form called securities. Securities and bonds, you guys might be aware or not, I'm not sure. Securities. So that's where they told, okay, all these things, whatever you're doing, has to be part of a regulation. So what they have done, they have created variety of regulation against all these transactions. Where they ensure that, when somebody is investing in any concept raised by some investor, it has been thoroughly verified by some legislative authority, so that it's not a fraud. So lately, this ICO has converted to a concept called STO, right? In that, there will be legal parties will also be involved. And one guy asked the question sometime back that, we lost the money, the guy died, what happened and all that. So in this particular STO case, they have a provision that, if somebody is getting died, there will be one middle authority. It will be also a node of a blockchain will be there, that there you can authorize somebody, okay, if I'm die, in case of that, you can, provide my details to that particular person. And again, for that person, there will be new private key will be generated. So in that case, you will not be losing your money. That's the benefit actually. So these are the various companies you can see. This is the Libra. Libra is a Facebook coin that they are coming up with, and they are coming up with in a very used way. You will see in coming time. There are so many these companies are there. They're working on a variety of blockchain concepts. There are the various financial companies across the world. They are using the blockchain thing. From DBS to Citibank to Royal Bank of Scotland to Barclays and to Lloyd Bank and HSBC and Paribas BNP and all those, and Vashia and Western Unions. Okay, fine. We discussed this already. Consensus I discussed already. Okay. Now I'm coming to the use cases. Okay, because you guys are primarily from the from the financial side, right? Any one of you know the word called trade finance, clearance, open bankings? Those things are clear?
So, sir, they are yet to decide on the specialization. They are all they have just joined MBA course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. No issue. So let me tell you the things in brief then in that case. Fine. So if you see, in financial sector, what all things we do one thing. First thing we do called clearance and settlement. When somebody wants to send the money to somebody from America to India, from Philippines to Canada, all those things comes to the picture. We call this as a remittance. Second thing we do a trade finance. Trade finance means, suppose I want to sell something to somebody in America or maybe in China or somebody somewhere else, then it's called a trade finance, where you have to create a sort of a some sort of LCA, letter of credit you have to create to ensure that the party there provide you some money, and then you transfer the object stuff to the person, and then you will get your remaining money back. So it has so many complexity involved. Okay. Third thing is that called ATM systems. In ATM systems, we know it's a very common system we use all across in order to get our cash. But sometimes some problem happens, and the system has some problem, something has happened, your money has lost in between. So generally what you do, you go to the bank branch and you will raise a complaint, or maybe you will call and you will raise a complaint, and maybe it takes 24 hours to 48 hours to sort out the problem, and your money will be back to your account. That's the trend now. So with the blockchain system, that ATM reconciliation system can also become a very seamless stuff. Other thing, I will discuss one of the use cases in detail also, don't worry. Other thing that coming in a very big way, it's called open banking actually. Something happened in I don't know the year, 5 or 6 years before, something has happened in Europe. what happened there actually in London, what government has told all the banks there, banks are there, they have their own software, they have their own systems, and they are serving their customer their own way. They have their mobile apps are there of every bank, they have their web applications, you can do all the transactions, it's are there, it's very much there actually. But what government tell them, the things are changing, and you have your own redundant and old mainframe based high-end systems, right? So you guys just cannot change your whole system to the customer need. Customer needs more information, more details, more basically products on the finance, so that they can decide on their financial things. Simply getting the bank statement doesn't tell anything. Suppose I'm having one credit card of Citibank, I'm having a bank account in my Kotak Mahindra Bank, and I have having one more bank account in some by XYZ Bank. What happens, for every bank, I need to get the details, and what will I do? I have to collect everything myself. It doesn't tell anything to me whether I'm doing the wrong expense, whether I'm doing right expense, how much I paid in the form of a penalty if I'm not paying my bills on time. It doesn't tell me anything. So how it is possible? The government of UK told the bank that you have to expose your systems to the outside world, and on that basis only, the banks in UK, what they have done, they have exposed their banks softwares APIs to the external world. APIs means application programming interface. It's you can think it's like a kind of a communication medium. Like if you want to get some detail from me, these are the details you have to pass me. It's called API. It's like a contract or some sort of a protocol that you have to pass inside my system to fetch the detail. It's called API. So all the bank has to expose their APIs, and once they will be exposing their APIs, you can see here what will happen. All those third parties, all those companies all across the world will be using those APIs and create variety of products. Suppose if I'm getting the API of a bank, what will I do? I will be using that API to create an application where I will tell all the users, you start using my software, and it will tell you your expense patterns, your income patterns, how much money you will be requiring in coming time if this is your income patterns. Actually, I'm giving you very basic examples. I'm giving you a very basic examples. I'm giving you. That's where the product of the application becomes very smart. You just cannot have all those Stone Age systems where you're simply getting your bank statement. Bank statement doesn't tell anything, right? It's nothing. So we need some more information to our banks. We are not getting it. So and bank cannot develop these applications by their own because their systems are very redundant. It's having a huge data. They cannot manage such things. So instead of that, they will be simply exposing the APIs, and software companies like us can utilize those APIs and can develop variety of systems. So this API systems can also be put inside the blockchain system by the banks, such that whenever any transaction happens by the user of that particular API, can be tracked and can be ensured that it's being used properly and it's not been compromised by so many hackers. Open bank is a really huge concept. Maybe lately I will be taking a full session on that. It's a 2 to 3 hours session itself. It's not a small thing. Okay. Now, other thing is called blockchain-based e-wallet. As we all use Paytm. Paytm is what? Paytm is a wallet system, right? And you do your transactions on that, and you upload the money. Okay. Before that, anybody can tell me the open banking application in India we are using right now?
So UPI.
Very good, very good, very nice, very nice. Good answer. Okay, good. Yes, UPI is one of the very, very good application, and you will see in coming time more such things will come. Okay. Okay, this is called a blockchain-based e-wallet system. As you know, Paytm is there. Paytm has become such a big stuff right now in India. But it's a you know, it's not using blockchain right now. All the transaction, whatever it does, it's not on the blockchain-based system. But what benefit it provides? You know, in case of wallet, we have three type of wallet systems. Actually, one called closed wallet system. One is the semi-closed wallet system, and third is the open wallet system. Okay. If you see a closed wallet system, so like, you know, if you see this milk basket, if you see this Grofers and Big Basket and other of this kind of Amazon Pay, what they do, it's an e-commerce platform, and you go and you buy the stuff from there. Now they have created their own wallet systems. You go and upload the money in their wallet systems, and you can utilize that money to only buy the stuff that is being listed on their platform. You cannot utilize that money anywhere. So that type of wallet system termed as a closed wallet. Okay. Now there is a second wallet called semi-closed wallets. Semi-closed wallet means there will be the owner of the system, but it can be utilized for the multi-vendor system. Multiple vendor can utilize the system actually, and that is only been approved by that particular company. For example, Paytm is a semi-closed wallet. Like, you know, if Paytm say you can buy the stuff from this particular merchant, you can do that. You can if they say you go and buy the stuff from my Paytm e-commerce platform, you can do that. But if Paytm doesn't have any deal with any other merchant, you can't do that. So it gives you a flexibility in a controlled way. It's called a semi-closed wallet. The third wallet system is called this open wallets. Open wallet generally is being created by the banks only, right? So the banks gives you a wallet systems, and it allows you to spend the money wherever you want. There's a wallet called Zelle in America, and it gives you a facility of the cross bankings also. It gives you a facility, you can do remittance also, like you can transfer the money to somebody also from India to America, or vice versa. And you can do all other things. You can use it like a normal bank account. As a normal bank account, you can utilize the system anywhere. You can send the money to cross banks, and you can do variety of others. It's like a total flexibility it gives you to your wallet. So these are the three wallet systems are there. So one project we are developing right now for Africa. It's an open wallet system on blockchain, and this is the kind of system we are creating. You can see, bank can have a merchants, can have a partners, can have the cashiers and the branches, and they are having their own e-wallet platforms where and this all bank stuff can be replicated with multiple banks also. So this whole system will be created, and all the partners, all the merchants, and all the branches, and whatever transaction, or maybe the end customers, all the transaction will be happening via the wallets only. And all the fee rules, whatever you want to create, will be created by the banks only for that. And all the transactions they are doing in wallet, and it will be part of the blockchain.
Sir, in this, banks will be also in the blockchain only, so they won't have their own server.
Sorry, I didn't get a question.
Sir, in this system, banks would not have their own private servers. It would be part of a blockchain also only.
Okay, good question. Actually, I told one concept called public blockchain and the consortium blockchain, right? In this particular case, it just cannot be the public blockchain. It's a bank data, right? Bank data should be visible to the concerned parties only. It cannot be part of all the parties. So in this particular case, we will be using the consortium blockchain concept. So bank and their stakeholders, like the merchants, like the partners, like branches, they can be the nodes of the system, including the bank, and they will be creating a blockchain ecosystem for themselves. It's not for the public. So all those nodes will be having data with themselves actually. Bank will have their own servers, partner will have their own servers, merchant will have their own servers. And if tomorrow a new bank comes to the system, they will have their own node systems. So they will keep adding the nodes on the permission basis. Whereas in case of public blockchain, there is no permission required. So yes, in that case also, if you are having more than 5 or 10 servers also, if one server gets down, it doesn't matter. Your application will work smoothly, seamlessly without any problem. Did it answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One more facility and that the blockchain provides, it's called a regulatory reporting and compliance. Right? As we know, for any banks, for any systems, they have to have a regulatory compliance. So no, somebody will come, they will check all the compliances, and on that basis, they will give the ratings or to the bank, and they will say, okay, what is the health of the bank and all that, right? But we all know what happens, right? Those people will go and they will have a parties and all, and they will check something, they will hide something, and something will happen. That's why that PNB thing happened, right? That the person created the letter of credit from the finance ministry office, and nobody was aware, and the PNB was in loss for like so many years, and that guy has never paid the money, but this information did not come out actually for so many years. But when you're talking about the blockchain system, it will make the system very transparent. If you're giving loan to somebody, if you are not getting the funds, if there's a delay, everything will be recorded inside a immutable, transparent digital ledger, and that will be shared across to the multiple parties. For example, if I say bank, RBI, and the finance ministry are the 3 nodes, and whenever any transaction happens in the PNB, the transaction is being updated to the RBI and also to the finance ministry. So in that case, whether PNB, some manager of the PNB does a fraud or trying to do some hands-on gloves with some builder or some other corporate guy, it cannot do that, because it is a total transparent and auditable system. Because you cannot delete any transaction once it happened. You cannot do anything. You cannot do things under the wrap. As I told you, ATM reconciliation, what happens whenever something happened and your transaction is not been completed, sometime, and it takes days to set up the, you will complain, you will get the money after 2 to 3 days. But when you're doing the blockchain-based systems, so all the systems will get the update simultaneously. Like if a transaction got wrong, everybody will get the update simultaneously. So the team who is doing the reconciliation will come to know the things upfront. They don't need to get the details from some other department and then they will verify and do the things. They will get the details upfront, and on that basis, they will act quickly, and maybe the guy will be getting his refund maybe within an hour or maybe within 10 minutes. So that's where it gives us the benefit.
Benefits.
Yes. Reducing errors, reducing fraud, reducing time, increasing the efficiency. As I told you, because frauds is the main important thing, because you cannot change any transaction. If it is wrong, if it is right, if it is loss, if it is profit, it is in front of you. So you cannot change anything. So that's where it gives you a value. Okay. In the trade finance, what generally happens, image for that. in the trade finance, what generally happens, if somebody wants to transfer some stuff to somebody in America, suppose some company is selling some electronic watches or maybe some clothes in India and wants to ship it to somebody in Singapore or maybe somewhere else. So how the business happens? The business happens such a way that, first of all, that person gets the letter of credit from that party and of that particular country. That guy will send some money or maybe a credit thing, and on that basis, that company who's creating that stuff will be getting the approval from the ministry of that particular department. For example, in case of a cloth, it will be the textile ministry, or maybe in case of electronics, it will be the Ministry of Electronics, whatever. It will get the certificate, okay, whatever you are exporting is the genuine thing that you can export as per the country's guidelines. And then it will go to the, nearest, what is that department calls? I'm missing that name of the department, maybe custom department. It go to the custom departments, and the custom department will check all the verifications. And on that basis, it will approve the further dealings to go it further, and it will shipping the containers to the ship or maybe airport, and then it will go there. Once it will reach there, the other party has to receive the containers, and on that basis, it will approve it and send the remaining payments. Now, during that period of time, if I'm sending some fund to you, if I'm sending you some stuff, how will I ensure that whether you will be paying me or not? Suppose you got the stuff and you are not paying, what will I do? Because you are a part of some different country. So that's where that particular company of that other country will be issuing a letter of credit, and it will be part of the department or somewhere in India. And once that thing will be accepted there, I can encash that letter of credit in form of money. So that's where all the transaction happen. It's very complicated. I'm not a trade finance expert. That's what I just read it. That's what I'm explaining you. So all of these transactions are very complicated, and sometimes multiple countries get involved in that. Multiple countries get involved in that. So with the blockchain, and maybe some later demo, I'll show you one demo also. Maybe in trade finance, all those parties like ministries, customs, the company itself, the other country companies, their ministry, their departments, all of them are becoming the stakeholder of the system. And without blockchain, their exchange becomes very slow, and it takes a hell of time to receive money sometimes from the other departments. But if everything is on the blockchain and data is being shared across in a seamless way, it is one of the best blockchain use case people are using. In fact, ICICI Bank or Kotak Bank has already implemented their trade finance concept on blockchain. They're already using it. I think clearance and settlement I already mentioned. How it is excellent way of doing the things. You can just see it. How generally does it happen? In case of a distributed ledger, everything has been shared across simultaneously to all the parties, and it will be very quickly. Nowadays, getting the money from America and other countries are so very fast. Within a day, you get the money. Within a day, or maybe and with cryptos and with the blockchain, it is a matter of hours. We are getting the money nowadays.
So, Sandeep sir, students have their next class at 1 o'clock. So how much time do we have? Do you think it will be taking more?
No, I think I'll take another 10 minutes more.
Okay, fine.
10 minutes more, nothing else.
Sure.
Fine. So this is all the various use cases in the financial thing I just wanted to convey. I will just quickly walk through you guys on the other use cases of the blockchain. One is called a supply chain. Okay, in supply chain, what happens? Suppose I want to eat a fish, and I want to know from where it is being taken care, from where it is being procured, how it is being stored, and how I'm getting, what is the condition, what is the quality and all. So from the place where it's being procured to the place, it is being delivered, I can track each and every party. All the parties will be part of the blockchain. I can very well clearly say, okay, these are the players who are part of the system, whether they have used the proper temperature or not to store the systems or not. So all those things I can very well do. And many food industries nowadays are kind of using this system to ensure that their product is having great quality, actually. Blockchain in healthcare is having a tremendous stuff. For example, in case of drugs, we in India and across the world, the counterfeit medicines are the main headache. We know whatever we are taking as a medicine, 30% of them are counterfeit drugs, actually. Okay, so with blockchain ecosystem in place, we can very well ensure who is the manufacturer, what are the details of the drug, and from where it travels to the place where it's being manufactured, to the wholesaler, to the retailer, to the medical store. I can track each and every player and ensure that whatever drug ID I'm getting, it is authorized by the manufacturer and it's not the counterfeit. So that's where it's the greatest use case also in the blockchain. We are doing one good project in this healthcare as well. Okay, music is fine. Land record is another use case I see where blockchain is having a great value. Yeah, these uses will take time. Maybe later we'll discuss in length. One last use case I just wanted to discuss with you guys. It's called identity on the blockchain. Identity on the blockchain means, what happens? Sometime I provide my medical records, to the hospitals. They do all the tests, and that the data is with them. My name, my personal details, my medical records are with them, right? Sorry. And they store their data in their database server. I really don't know what exactly they are doing with the data. They might be using that data to some other company who might be analyzing it to generate some medicines and all. We really don't know, right? So what blockchain is trying to do, that whenever somebody is trying to access my detail, it must be taking the permission from me. Whether it's my medical data, whether it's my personal data, whatever data somebody wants to access, my educational data, whatever there, one must be getting the permission from me, otherwise it should not be accessible. So that's where a unique identity system are being planned and it's being generated, so that if I am having my medical data, I will not be sharing it until I know from where it's being utilized. And if suppose some other company who is generating some drug and they want to access my data and they are earning some $1 billion of the profit, I will say, fine, you're getting my data, you share me some money. So there you can even monetize your identities as well. So identities on the blockchain is coming up as a real big use case. Even Aadhaar is also planned to move to the blockchain in coming years. That's what I see. The blockchain is going to impact each and every life, each and every domain, each and every use cases, especially finance, in a really, really big way. So that's it for the session. Hope you guys liked it and got some knowledge out of it. And if you guys have any question, you can post me and send me mail. I would love to answer at any point of time. Thank you very much. Hello.